Hey, what's going on guys? I'm Alex from Simple Mods and welcome back to another video. Now before I get into the details of the video today, I would just like to say a huge thanks to all of you guys that have subscribed to my channel because it is now at over 1,000 subs. And while that may not seem as such a huge number to a lot of you, it definitely is a big deal to me. So thanks a lot guys. I feel like I don't really get as much time as I would want with my videos to cover everything that I do with my case modding. But when I see you guys subscribing to my channel, liking my content, giving me positive feedback in the comments below, then that definitely pushes me to release more videos. So definitely a huge thumbs up for that. Thanks a lot guys. And that brings me to the content of this video today. This beast of a machine sitting here next to me is my Tempest case mod. This is in the Cooler Master MasterCase Maker 5T. And I have worked on this case for the 2017 Cooler Master Case Mod World Series. I announced the project about 2 months ago when I covered the Maker 5T case in more detail on the channel, so if you guys want to check that out, then I'll put a link in the description. When I announced the project, I really wanted to cover a lot more of the modding and the building process in videos and show you guys as much as I can of the process. However, with the time spent on such a case mod like this, there are hundreds of hours that go into it, and with my full-time job on top of that, I did actually feel like I was running out of time and the build had to be ready in time for the competition to finish. So this video will cover the case in a lot more detail, and I'll show you guys everything that I've done to mod the case, some of the difficulties that I've had, and some of the plans that I have for this build moving forward. But before I get into all that, I just want to talk a little bit more about the Cooler Master competition. There were hundreds of amazing case mods in the Cooler Master Case Mod World Series this year as any other year, so the competition was definitely tough. However, I'm very happy to say that for the ANZ version of the World Series, my Tempest build actually came in second place, and I'm definitely super happy about that. We're pretty lucky here in the Australia and New Zealand region with the local Cooler Master team hosting an ANZ version of the World Series competition that allows modders to compete on a more local level. So when it comes to case modding, I think I do some pretty cool stuff, and I think a lot of you guys watching and along with my friends as well will definitely agree to that. However, there are some modders out there that push case modding so much further than this, and it's absolutely insane the amount of detail they can go in and some of the things that they can achieve. So if you guys want to see some more of the entries into the Cooler Master World Series and all the other winners for the ANZ edition, then I'll put a link in the description below and you guys can check that out in more detail. So I just want to say a huge thanks to all those people that have voted for my build locally, all of the judges involved, as well as the local Cooler Master team. Zin and Vance, you guys are awesome for hosting such a competition for case modders here in Australia and New Zealand. But enough about that, let's check out the build. Alright guys, so here we go. I brought you in just a little bit closer to the case, and I also have it on my Lazy Suze in here, just so I can spin it around nicely and give you guys a good look around it. Now before I get into the details of the case mods, I just want to go over the specs a little bit. And before I get into the specs, I just want to say that this case, this entire build was built for a modding competition obviously, so it all goes around the aesthetics, not about the latest and greatest hardware. So every time when you do a case mod, especially with me at least, it's not about the hardware, it's definitely about the art and the passion of the case modding. So specs are definitely not that important. That's why you will find that I am actually using some older components in this case, and it's not the latest and greatest hardware. Now the case, of course, I've covered it in a lot of detail. It's the Cooler Master MasterCase Maker 5T, so I'm not going to go any more into that. Now the motherboard that I'm using is actually the ASUS Rampage 5 Extreme motherboard. I wanted an X99 motherboard, and I also wanted something that would match the theme quite nicely. Now the CPU is the Intel Core i7-6850K, and that was gladly provided to me by Mwave. They're a retailer here in Australia, so thanks a lot for that guys, much appreciate the CPU. The RAM, it's got 16 gigs of Kingston HyperX Predator 3000 MHz DDR4. The graphics cards, I'm using two reference NVIDIA GTX 980s. Those are just the cards that I had available at the time when I started working on this case. I am actually using two Kingston HyperX Savage SSDs, 240 gigs each, and those are on the back side, and they are going to be running in RAID 0. And just at the bottom I have two Firecuda 2TB hard drives. So those are the hybrid SSHD hard drives from Seagate. The power supply is the Cooler Master V1000 power supply. It's a 1000 watt gold rated power supply, fully modular, and you can see it just here. And of course I'm using fans also from Cooler Master, and you can see them in the front panel, also on here. So I'm using a total of 8 of them. So there's 6 running 3 on each side, push-pull on the radiator in the front panel, and then just 2 more at the back just here. The cables were gladly provided by CableMod. You can sort of see them running through here. Those are fully custom sleeved custom link cables from CableMod. All the water cooling is by Bitspower, and then I'm actually using some EK blood red coolant. And that's pretty much it in terms of all the specs. Now, if you guys saw my first video, part 1 that I did for this, actually was talking about inverting the motherboard with the I/O towards the top, and that is pretty much exactly what I did. You can see that the I/O is just up here with the graphics cards facing that way. Everything else is inversed. Now, in order to do that, what I started doing first of all with the case is I was thinking of actually, because if you actually take off the rivets from all of the panels that go around it, like the bottom, front, top, all of that, they're actually sort of interchangeable. I mean, you do have to modify a little bit, but you can actually take the back out, put it on the top, swap things around like that. But actually I didn't really go down that path. Instead I chose to fully cut out a section in the back. I left the PSU mounting here just because I do have the pass-through fittings going through it there. And then I also cut out a large section of the top as well. And then I took just the I/O mounting from the back panel. I riveted that out, and then I actually mounted it to a new panel on the top. There is the, of course, the relocation of the power supply. So the power supply is mounted here. What I did for that is I actually cut a hole in the bottom of the panel, and then I used the existing mounting plate that you actually use on the back of the Maker 5T to mount that from the bottom, facing upwards. And I'm actually using a 90-degree power cable to plug into that. On the back panel, given the fact that I've moved the I/O towards the top, I do actually have a 240mm radiator mounting on the back with the 2 fans here, and then the radiator is just sticking out on the outside. You can see it here with the cover panel that covers this. So I'll just go over all the interior mods first, and then I'll cover everything that I did on the outside. So also another mod that I did, pretty much cut out the whole section here just for all the pass-through fittings, and then just to cover that, make things easier for me, I did make this acrylic plate that mounted over the whole thing, and with the pass-through fittings shooting straight down into that. Everything gets connected at the bottom. The other thing is the floating pump and reservoir. So the way this is mounted is I actually chose to keep the midsection of the motherboard tray that's at the back there. I actually did that on purpose, and I did not reverse the whole motherboard tray. I actually mounted a new sort of plate over the existing motherboard tray, and I mounted all the standoffs into that, and that's how the motherboard is mounted in this new orientation. So the pump and reservoir combo actually looks like it's floating there, but it does have a 90-degree bracket just on the bottom. So there's 2 on each side. They mounted the pump underneath, and then there's a piece of acrylic that mounts to the mid plate on the motherboard tray in the back, and that's how it's able to hold everything up. The custom hard drive mountings at the bottom, these ones were just pretty much, I did a piece of acrylic that covered the entire section of the back, and then just mounted them straight onto that, just screw them on pretty much, and then I have this cover plate that goes over it. So you'll find a lot of cover plates. There's one here over the power supply. I just wanted to cover all the yellow branding that I had on there, so I still kept the V1000 branding there. There's a piece of vinyl here. There's the vinyl over the Firecuda hard drives. And then the only other vinyl that I did was actually on the fans that you can see here. Just a bit of Mass Effect sort of Andromeda initiative from the new Andromeda game. So I do have the AI logo there. The N7 branding over the SLI bridge. And then I just did this to cover the Extreme on the motherboard. That was actually upside down, so I didn't quite like the look of that. So I just did this custom acrylic plate, just with a bit of vinyl there. This says Tempest on it. Now the biggest issue that I ran when I was building everything, all of this sort of fit quite nicely. There's a hole just at the bottom there for some cables to pass through, mainly from the fans and all the front panel connectors and all that. But the biggest issue that I had, and my biggest fear that I thought I wasn't going to be able to complete the case mod because of it, was actually the power supply mounting. So the power supply mounted, fit, everything was just fine. And then when I got the pump and the reservoir combo, I actually realized that it's actually quite large and it does not leave enough room for cables in there. So it was very, very tight fit to get all those cables in there. So what I actually did is I put a pillow actually underneath the case at the front here, just to keep the front lifted up a little bit as the bottom was down, and then just had this gap underneath, let the power supply just sit there. I plugged all the cables in, and then everything else was like sort of pushed in, and luckily it gave me just enough room to fit all the cables, push them through to the back, it runs from the power supply around to the back, except for the GPU cables. The GPU cables actually just go straight from the power supply, and they plug in straight into the graphics cards. There's a lot of people that said they didn't like that aspect of the build. However, I really disagree. I actually think that if you do have some nice custom cables, then why not show them off? And I think this definitely shows them off in a really good fashion, just having them swerving through the tubes a little bit, straight from the power supplies. They get plugged in straight into the graphics cards. And there's another section of the case that some people actually didn't really like, and they had some questions about, and that was actually this tube here. And that's actually the only piece of PETG tubing that I have actually used in this entire build. And the reason I used that is mainly because I wanted all of the tubes to shoot down into this midsection here and then all connect underneath at the bottom. And the reason I use a tube here is the only other way I could have done it really is I would have brought a piece of straight, I could have used the chrome tubing, brought it straight out to there and then shoot it straight down, but that would have meant it actually would have gone over the motherboard area. So I thought going over the reservoir area here and then doing this curve so it clears the power supply and has enough room for all the cables and all that, that was actually a better option. I actually quite like it. I think that this single tube here gives it a nice contrast and a nice break from all of the other straight chrome pipes. So I actually really quite like that aspect of the build. And to those actually wondering how the water cooling system works, is it goes from the pump here up into this top RAM slot there. It goes over into the chipset water block that's just underneath there. From that goes into the CPU, goes up into the VRM, goes into the other RAM water block here, and then shoots straight down. From down, it goes all the way at the back into the radiator. From the radiator, it goes up into the graphics card, goes to the other graphics card, goes down, then actually goes up into this tube here, goes into the radiator at the front, and then from the radiator at the front goes into the reservoir and then back into the pump. So that's the way everything circulates. Some people were asking why I water cooled the RAM. Again, there's no real performance benefit for water cooling RAM. I mainly did everything for aesthetics. So like I said at the start of the video, everything was done with aesthetics in mind for the case modding competition. I actually wanted the build to look sort of like a engine on the inside, like a reactor or something like that. So I thought the more tubes, the more water cooling, the better, and actually quite like the look of it. I could have actually used a single plate that goes over the chipset, CPU water block, and the VRM. The water block came as a kit from Bitspower and did actually have a plate that covers all that, and then that would have meant I would have only had 2 connections around that area there, but I actually really wanted to have all the tubes going around all the straight lines and all that, so that's why I went with that, and also that's why I water cooled the RAM as well. Another thing that I did, I actually did this just recently, so if you saw my reveal video when I showed the time-lapse of the building process and the finished build, there was just these HyperX sort of plates here that I didn't have. Those were just added in there just a couple of days ago actually. I added those just from the original heatsink of the RAM. I just peeled those off, heated them up just with a hairdryer, peeled them off, cut them in half, and then they're just stuck on there with some double-sided tape. Most of the things are stuck with double-sided tape, so it's pretty easy to use double-sided tape. Now the N7 logo there is just a piece of acrylic with some vinyl stuck with some double-sided tape. Same with the Tempest plate here, stuck with some double-sided tape. This is stuck with double-sided tape. Same with the plate on top of the hard drives, that's stuck with double-sided tape. So nothing too fancy there, guys. Of course, all the hardware and everything that is properly mounted. Same with this plate here, you'll see some screws in the bottom. You'll see some screws with this plate that I did here. There's also another one at the top. That one at the top is actually done with double-sided tape as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of the interior of the case. Now, I do have to say a huge thanks to Corey from Designs by IFR. I'm FaceRoll Gaming. He actually helped me with some of the aluminum panels that you see on the inside of the case. Those are actually cut using his CNC machine, so thanks a lot for that, Corey. Everything else other than that was done by me, by hand. I don't have any expensive machinery like that, so I don't have a personal laser cutter or a CNC machine or anything like that. I use a Dremel rotary tool to do all the cuts and different panels and cases and stuff like that, and then I also use a jigsaw. And then to cut all the acrylic that I have, I do actually use a scoring tool. So I just score it and then I snap it, and it's actually very easy to do it that way. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And then this brings me to the outside of the case. Now you will see the nice Tempest logo, which was done on the front panel. So what I did for this is actually cut a hole in the entire front panel. and then this is just stuck over. Now this, of course, I did get laser cut. I would not be able to get into this much detail cutting everything by hand. So this was actually, I outsourced this and actually got a laser cut. All of the panels that are on the outside were laser cut. It is my design. Me and a friend of mine actually worked on it all night doing the design, getting all the measurements and everything. And actually it looks pretty spot on. And then again, double-sided tape. Everything is stuck on with double-sided tape on the outside. So that's definitely nothing fancy there, but it does look pretty cool. You can, of course, still take this off as normal. There you go. It's just a normal panel. You can see the fans there a little bit more. So let's just get this back on. So they're actually bare aluminum, and then I actually brushed these by hand just with some 40 grit sandpaper, I think it was 40 or 80, I can't remember. I did actually get a tip from another case modder from Sweden, Justin from Metallic Acid, so thanks a lot for the tip, man. If you're watching this video, I actually did all of the aluminum panels hand brushed using the tips that he gave me. So yeah, that actually turned out pretty well. Same on the back panel. And this on the back panel, I did talk a little bit about this when I did the initial video covering the case. Now it is actually just another piece of the top panel. I actually asked Cooler Master to send me another one. And then this is mounted on the back. And then you can see the new aluminum plate that I did there to mount the radiator and the fans and all that once I had cut out the rest of it. And the way this top section of the case is mounted on the back is I just use some aluminum L brackets on the inside. They're just one there, the longer piece there, and then they're just tapped into that just with some M4 screws, and then it just gets hauled on like that. So that's pretty much it, nothing too complicated. If you are wondering how I'm connecting cables and all that to the top, well, I actually just made a little hole here, and then the top panel actually just lifts up using magnets, and that's very easy to lift up. There you go, and then I can just pass the cables through here, and then the top panel, you can also see a new aluminum panel that was mounted, and then the handle and everything is actually still fully functional as it was on the case originally. So I'm actually really glad that I got to keep all that, and then that just mounts back there like that. Now let me just turn the case around and I'll show you guys a good look at the back. All right guys, so here we go. I'll just give you guys a good look at the back. Now I actually did the turn off the build for this. Before I take off the panel, just want to show you what I did. It's just a normal tempered glass. I have the Powered by ROG logo on there, and then I have all of these sponsor logos on there. So that's ASUS, Cooler Master, Bitspower, Mwave that provided the CPU, CableMod, HyperX, Seagate, and then we have Metarena here, which is my friend that actually helped a lot organizing some of the sponsorships for this. He does run his own marketing agency here in Australia, helps out a lot of the modders here, and then he's actually the guy that helped me with the design for all of the aluminum panels that went on the outside of the case. So thanks a lot for that, Josh. Now you will find cables pretty neat, I'd like to say. So there's the two SSDs, 240 gig from HyperX, Savage ones. There's the hard drive connections, and actually, you may not have noticed this before, but the hard drives are not powered on, just because when I was finishing off the build, it was actually the cables for them were not long enough for the custom cables that I got. So then I did have to get another replacement set, which I do have. I just didn't get a chance to put in. You'll have all the cables from the power supply coming there. Here's a 24 pin here. And then all these are all the fan cables. And I actually was able to use the existing fan controller on the case. And there are buttons for that on the front panel. And then there's the red light that you saw underneath. That's actually from the original LED strip that comes with the case. So you can actually control that from the button on the front panel as well. You can make that pulsate, or you can turn it completely off or leave it on. It's very basic. And then everything else is RGB. I do have a remote for that. It's just an RGB strip from CableMod. Another cover panel that I did from acrylic, just to sort of hide some of the cables that are coming from the front panel. There are some cables that actually are underneath this, and they actually just pop out here, plug in straight to the controller. And then there's some more cables that hide underneath here where the SSD's cables are. Those are all the front panel connectors that actually go underneath through here to connect into the motherboard. And then you've got the fan cables that also come from the back section of the case in there. Moving forward with this build, I actually like it quite a lot. So given the fact that I said that I haven't used the latest and greatest components to it, I actually do want to turn this into my new personal build. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it apart. I'm going to put the new 16 gig of HyperX Predator memory that they're sending over. So that'll upgrade the build to a total of 32 gigs. And then I actually do have two 1080s that I'll swap out for the 980s. Not sure if the holes for the pass-through fittings here will line up. Not sure if it'll be a bit different. Should be, because I'm using Founders cards, and these are also reference 980s. So hopefully they'll all line up. If not, I'll have to make a new acrylic plate and then remount everything, but that shouldn't be hard to do. So yeah, when I do that, then I'll definitely try and film a little bit more, show you guys some of the progress of how I'm draining the build, pulling out everything, installing the new graphics cards and all that. And then, yeah, this will be my new personal build because I'm actually very proud of it. I actually have spent probably the most amount of time out of all my builds. The most amount of detail has gone into this build, a lot of planning and everything, and I'm definitely super proud of it. So yeah, I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. Hope it gave you a lot more of an understanding of what it went into producing this case mod. And if you guys enjoy my content, then give it a like, leave some comments, let me know some feedback. This is the video quality, all of the mods and all that. And yeah, if you enjoy my content, then subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.